Okay, what's going on, everyone? My name is Mangg. Welcome back to Hanging with Mangg. Today, we're playing some XCOM 2. Heavily modded, of course. About 400 mods, I think. This is a fresh campaign, so you're not going to see anything too crazy, probably. But it was either this or more WoW Classic. And I figured people would rather probably see this. I did finally hit 60 in WoW Classic. Took a lot longer than I thought it would. But glad that's all over.
New objective added.
The advent officers have clearly been modified to allow for their subordinates to receive new orders psionically. The implanted chip is... Commander, during the course of our research, we made a startling breakthrough that has led us to another
so I
potential
guess
avenue of study.
let's
However,
get into
if we are to
things.
proceed down this path, we must do so immediately, or I fear we will lose our opportunity to return.
This week on this channel,
Since we're all friends now, maybe you could lend my people a hand in dealing with a problem of ours.
Commander,
same old, more Disco Elysium, more Star Wars. That's the plan for the rest of this coming week as well.
Commander, you should be aware. We're detecting lost activity in this area. Our forces will need to be especially vigilant.
I mean, like I said, I don't really have anything else like I want to get to. There's no other big games like, oh man, I wish I was Let's Playing that as well, and blah blah blah. Like, it's just I'm doing two good games. They're both pretty lengthy, I guess, and it's all good. So I'm not gonna complain. Yeah, that's that. I did start recording that sort of exploring video game thing with the first Final Fantasy.
Squad green to deploy.
That'll probably be pretty slow going because I'm a little Final Fantasied out, obviously, and it's the original Final Fantasy on the NES, which has its kinks. I was looking, there's actually like improved versions. I probably mentioned this at some point in the past. I forgot about it. There's improved versions of the original on like the MSX and stuff that look way better.
We picked up an emergency transponder signal from one of
It was on like another sort of weird system as well that with like nice color, and it looked a lot better. But if I do anything other than the original NES, there's gonna be questions. So I'll just stick to the original, even though it's not what I would normally play.
Priority is locating them first, but keep an eye out for any additional survivors nearby. Once you've secured the targets, move to the designated coordinates for extraction. Keep your heads up out there, people. We have a visual confirmation on the VIP.
I'm just gonna play through it all. I'm gonna record every second of my playthrough, and obviously I'm not gonna use the grand majority of that footage because, you know, a lot of it is just standard battles and stuff, and I'm gonna be using fast forward and blah blah blah.
Wait. Are those
But yeah, we're just gonna,
humans?
I'll just get through it eventually, and then I'll put together a video on, we'll see how it goes. It's a nice thing at this point, I guess, having the sort of the
with caution, Commander. They are certainly dangerous.
Having sort of a certainty about myself in that, you know, I have this idea and I know that I can make a video about, you know, I know I can fulfill this idea. It's not like some far-fetched thing. So there's a nicety about that sort of thing. You know, people that are trying to get into YouTube and stuff like that, it's a lot of stuff like, you know, oh, I don't know if my videos are going to be any good. I don't know if I can do all that. You know, I don't know how to make video, you know, all this sorts of these questions. And for me, it's just like, yeah, I know I can do it. I don't know exactly if it'll be well received, but I know I can do it. And it's kind of nice being at that point in my career, I guess. And a lot of people, you know, you take any career, you should develop some sort of confidence in what you're doing. And I guess I'm at that point. I guess the only question is that I would have is, I know I would probably enjoy making it. This type of video, this little series, exploring video games or whatever. I know I would enjoy making it. Whether or not it would actually be entertaining is a different question. And I guess the only way to determine that is just do it. So I have no idea when that'll all happen, when that'll drop. Nothing. I have no idea. At some point. Right now, between now and January, I'm just focusing on putting out 2 exploring videos every week. So that takes up quite a bit of time. But since right now all I'm doing is just recording myself playing a game, it's not that strenuous, which is sort of a nice part. Yeah, so I guess speaking of exploring, that was our segue. I put out a video on Imago. I think it was SCP-3004, which is a pretty wild SCP. It's one of those things that you really would only see in the SCP universe, I guess. Very unique. And so it's got pretty good views. Pretty decent response, and the author popped into my Discord after I posted it and said I did a great job. He was really happy about it, blah blah blah, which is always nice to hear. He did correct me on something that I said that was not correct, and so I had to go leave a pinned comment explaining the mistake, which doesn't happen often, but I'd rather know about the mistake than just leave it.
Affirmative.
So I appreciate that he corrected me. They corrected me, sorry. I tend to use he as the default, and I don't... It's just something ingrained, and God, I really gotta break out of that. I really gotta... I mean, you can't be on the internet just only using he all the time. It doesn't work like that. But then, They actually only stuck around in my Discord for like a couple days or a day or something, a couple days. They quickly got into some discussions, arguments, I guess, with some other people in my Discord. And they messaged me and they were like, yeah, it's not really working out, me and your Discord, but they added me as a friend and they want to keep chatting with me occasionally, so
Let's finish this fight.
Let him have it.
it is what it is. I also released a video, the first video in the D&D side series on the history of D&D, which it was a video I was decently proud of. I think if you're looking for the history of Dungeons and Dragons and TSR, Gary Gygax, I think it's a decent summary. I don't think I really got much wrong, or, you know, I don't think I left out anything really important. It was decent. Get a bunch of comments from people that are like, oh, this is not the history of D&D I expected. And it's like, what world are you living in where you... I guess. I mean, I'm so far removed from that sort of understanding of... If you say history of D&D, you know, I know exactly what you're talking about the history of the game. Because obviously Dungeons and Dragons doesn't have any sort of singular setting. But I guess if you don't know anything about it, you might just assume D&D is like Star Wars or something, you know, it's or Harry Potter. It's got this setting that everyone plays in, that you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. So I guess, but I don't think it's really any fault of mine. The title is pretty accurate. I saw one comment from a guy that was like, I was expecting this video to be pretty dry, but it ended up being the fucking Sahara or something like that. And it's like, I mean, I guess. If you're not interested at all in the topic, I don't know what I can really do to make it exciting for you. I thought it was pretty interesting, but I find a lot of things interesting that other people don't, so I don't know. Are you late? Well, I mean, technically, you were not here when it started, so that it would be late. I don't know if anything happened. I mean, obviously that was basically a one-off video. It really has nothing to do with the D&D side series. I mean, no other video in the side series is going to be covering any sort of real history of D&D. I mean, maybe there'll be mentions. Of course, there'll be mentions of, like, publications and books and things like that, but otherwise, we're mostly diving into the lore now, and I had not really decided how this side series was going to... what was going to comprise the side series.
Understood. Moving out.
I know I wanted to cover monsters and sort of the bestiary and all sorts of different unique Dungeons and Dragons creatures and things like that. That's all sort of pretty interesting. But I didn't know how I wanted to format it, how I wanted to group things up, whether I wanted to do like an A to Z type thing and just do one video for all the interesting A creatures and B creatures, blah, blah, blah. Or if I wanted to do single videos, highlighting specific singular creatures in each video. In the end, I decided to go with that second route. I decided to go with a number of smaller videos highlighting single creatures that are interesting.
On our way.
On my way.
One is, although the overall videos are likely to be a bit shorter, does allow me to sort of go into greater detail about these more interesting creatures. And two, overall, it's less work for me. And I think for a side series, that's a good thing. Otherwise, we run into the same problem with the 40K series. So, I decided the first video, I mean, I was always planning on starting with aboleths, pretty much no matter what, because they're pretty interesting. And they're pretty early in the alphabet. So, first video is going to just be on aboleths. Nothing else. It's being worked on right now, so I can't tell you exactly how long it'll be, but there's a decent amount of material to work with for a creature that is as popular as that. I mean, probably in the long run, we'll be talking about some more obscure stuff. The aboleth is pretty well known, I think. It's been in every single D&D edition since AD&D First Edition. So the more obscure stuff we get to, maybe there'll be less material, but like aboleths, there was like a whole chapter of like a supplement written entirely about aboleths and like their ecology and society and their, you know, mentality, all this sorts of stuff about aboleths. So yeah, it won't be like it's not going to be a 4-minute video, I'll say that, at least for aboleths. But in the future, I'm not opposed to putting out like a 5-minute video for this side series. And I'm well aware of the golden rule of getting at least 10 minutes. But A, I don't mind if I do less work and make a little less money off of a side series. And B, they're actually working on sort of removing that thing. I think they realize, or maybe they're just greedier. I don't know what it is. But they're actually working on experimenting with allowing some stuff under 10 minutes. I don't know exactly like mid-roll or if it's just pre and post. I don't know. But they're working on being a little bit more flexible with the whole 10-minute thing, because a lot of channels just pad out their videos just to be slightly over 10 minutes so they can put all the ads in. And then the actual next exploring video is on 3007, World of Two Artists, which is a pretty cool one. I personally like it quite a bit, but I never like it that much if I have to interpret an SCP. Like if it's left sort of vague and I have to offer a potential explanation based on my personal thoughts. Because I'm always hesitant. Because with something like that, with an interpretation, people can be like, wow, what the fuck, you're way off here, man, what the hell? And the author can come in and be like, whoa, what are you saying here? This is way off. Whereas if it's factual, if it's all based on facts that I can confirm and things like that, it's just,
There's room for us to expand our
I feel more comfortable. Now, sometimes it'll be open to interpretation and the author will provide the correct, like, their interpretation, which that is usually what I'll read and I'll go with. That's why I always check discussions and things like that. Sometimes the author will we'll do that. That was not the case for this SCP. It's just left open. So we'll see what people have to say. Like I said, overall, I like the SCP, so I think it's good.
Strategic resource located.
But yeah, maybe I just got something wrong. I don't know.
Avenger plotting new course.
Moving on then. That's the channel discussion.
Another important step forward in our research.
I guess that moves on to Mangg. We had a session. We had a session Thursday, and we're apparently having another session tomorrow. So we get a little 1-2 punch of D&D.
We can now work to establish contact with local resistance groups operating out of regions around the globe. Once we've collected sufficient intel to
In the session, last time we had arrived in this ruined village that we had been sent to check out. This messenger had arrived in our town, screaming bloody murder about an attack from orcs and blah blah blah. And so we were sent by the town council to see if this guy was telling the truth.
To work with the resistance factions to complete these covert actions. They'll be gone for a few days.
And
build influence with the resistance while generating material.
To
Might take the elders by surprise if we switch
determine the
Maybe we should try something new.
level of threat that might be present to our town. So we had gone to this place up north on the edge of Zuknul, which is pretty much Mordor. I mean, it's Mordor. And we had arrived. It was, of course, all in ruins. It was burned to a crisp. We saw a ship full of refugees fleeing to the south. We didn't really, like, catch up to them or anything, but we saw them. And in the town, we encountered a wizard of some type who was able to create some illusionary doppelgangers. And we beat him down, although I went unconscious in the middle of the fight. I got knocked out. And so I wasn't there to prevent Thomas from killing this wizard instead of taking him hostage. So that's no good. We couldn't talk to him and figure out what exactly happened here and why they're attacking and blah 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 blah. So the session started with us sort of discussing exactly what to do next. Obviously, there was an attack here. There was a threat coming out of Zuknul. We investigated the town a little bit, poked around. It seemed like the town was attacked by these wizards as well as an armored force of at least a couple dozen. It could have been a couple hundred. I couldn't tell whether or not it was orcs, but they were definitely heavy armored troops. They looted the whole place. I don't know if we actually found any bodies. That was never mentioned. And so it was just, we had to decide between, like, oh, we also determined that they came in from the north, so they came in from deep Zuknul, but then they also left the town back north. They didn't, like, continue on in some other direction. So they came in, beat everything down, and then left the same way. So we don't really have a motive.
Menace 1-5, hostile forces are attacking the outpost. Eliminate all enemy units and protect those civilians. Advent came in hot, and so did we.
Which
We
is
won't have a concealed position for deployment
a problem.
on this one.
We could go north, deep into Zuknul and try and determine the size of the force and what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. But if something happens to us and we get captured or something like that, there's no one to tell our town exactly what happened here and what's going on. They just never hear from us again, or who knows what. And we could split up. We could send Golk back. And the rest of us go on, but you know, Golk alone on this trail, you know, who knows what it's, and then we'd still sort of be split up. It just wasn't good. We decided we have to stick together here.
No time.
And I felt it was more prudent to return to our town, tell them what's happening, tell them to prepare for a potential attack, and then maybe come back here and go north and see if we can scout anything out. But the town needs to start preparing for a potential attack, because our town is not ready. So we all headed back. Nothing happened. We got back to town. We informed the council. And they started sort of deliberating about exactly what to do. Should they send us on a mission again, or should or should we stay and help protect the town? Do they send messengers to other cities for assistance? You know, military assistance, all sorts of deliberations done by the council. And it's not like we're, you know, the council's bitches or anything like that. So we were free to make our own decisions and, influence the council or talk to the council, you know, tell them what we think. And so I'm thinking about I spent a while just sitting there thinking about the situation. We have a undefended town with about 1,000 people. Only 15 of them are guards with combat experience. About 285 others are fighting fit, capable adults. So they don't have combat experience, but they're, you know, they could fight. They could potentially grab pitchforks or whatever and form a militia. There's no walls around the town. There's no palisades or anything like that. There's a few watchtowers, but most of them are dilapidated. And as for the hostile force, we have potentially up to hundreds of orcs. We really are not sure. Could be hundreds of orcs. Armored with proper weapons and plenty of combat experience. Orcs. Which, that would be worrisome enough. But we also then have these fire mages that we fought one of them. There's probably more. And so you have fire mages that can just lob fire or melt things. You know, the guy we fought in the other town, he was like, he put his hands on like some stone wall and he was planning to like turn it into a bomb and make it explode. I mean, these guys wield some powerful fire stuff. And so if we throw up some like wooden watchtowers, they can easily just potentially lob some fire and melt them in one go. Meaning that even if we did have the time, manpower, resources to put up like a wooden palisade, chances are like it would just get burned down by these fire wizards putting their hands on it and turning it into a bomb or something. Who knows what. So I'm sitting there racking my brain trying to think of a solution. A viable solution that would best guarantee the survival of the majority of these residents. And I couldn't really think of one. With the resources at our disposal, with what we know of the enemy, nothing really jumped out at me be especially viable.
Don't even think about it.
I mean, yes, of course, we can train a militia in a few days, and we can arm them with pitchforks and, you know, farming tools and blah blah blah, and they can stand and fight. But if we do that, chances are the grand majority of them are going to die, and quite potentially all of them will die, and the town will be overrun anyways. There's nothing that we could construct as sort of like defensive positions or traps or anything like that that would really offer any sort of significant advantage, either due to enemy numbers or due to the fire mages. Anything we would construct would be made out of wood. We don't have a reliable source of stone. It's just like a farming town of 1,000 people. It's just a small community. We're really not a match for any sort of army. I do have this water control rod, but there's not really a great source of water anywhere close. There's a river that runs next to the town. Depending on how wide and deep this river is, it's possible it could be advantageous, but the rod I haven't really mastered yet. It could be useless.
Not all are created equal. Over here. Target neutralized. We'll make it. Affirmative.
There's always the option of fleeing.
So, did you miss me?
But generally, a town is not super accepting of that total abandonment of their homes. So I told the council, you've got to evacuate all the women and children. I mean, you just have to send them down to Blue Cape. You know, hopefully we win this fight and they can come back. But for now, they gotta go. You can't stay here. Second, I urged them to send messengers to a couple other towns asking for military assistance. But chances are we don't have time. You know, time for them to get to these towns, time for them to deliberate and decide and muster, and then for potentially any military force to arrive to our town. Chances are we'll all be dead anyways. But I urge them to send the messengers anyway. Then the council told us about this shipwreck in the ocean, a little ways away from us. There's rumors of this shipwreck. This captain apparently had a bunch of weapons and magical items, and it all went down with this ship due to unforeseen circumstances. And he said, perhaps you could check this out. And so in the end, I agreed. It was potentially an advantage. We need every advantage we could get. I also sent Gyro's character north to see if she could scout out by herself, see if the attacking force is on the way. You know, anything she could find that could be of use to us as far as reconnaissance and intel. I also had... We are training some guys. We're training the fighting fit people as a militia, just in case. And I also am having them sort of extend the river that runs alongside the town to have it sort of curve around the town a little bit more, provide a little bit of extra protection. Obviously, we can't have a whole moat around the town. That just doesn't work. I mean, we could. We could, but we're still going to be laid siege to, especially if they have fire wizards, which we're pretty damn sure they do. So, really, we would just be isolating ourselves. There would be a prolonged siege, or perhaps not that prolonged, and we'd all just end up torched and burned alive anyways. No, we need a confrontation if that's what we're having. So then I was thinking, well, what if we have them think that the town is abandoned? What if they arrive and they see that the town is empty? There's no one around. They're not going to just lay siege to it. You know, they're not going to bombard it, anything. Well, why would they? They are going to come into the town, though, and they're going to start looting, meaning they're going to go into all the buildings. And that's where we have an advantage, because they'll be splitting up their army. And we can have all our militia people spread out in all sorts of different buildings and just ambush them. Really, an ambush is our best bet. And the only place that we can ambush them, that we know that they will visit, if they are attacking us, of course, is our town. We don't know at this point what direction they'll be coming in. We don't know their numbers. We really don't know much of anything. But we do know if an attack is coming, it's going to happen in our town, and we can be ready for it. Now, if we're just standing there in open field, like just defiant and holding weapons and blah, 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 they're going to blast us with everything they got, and it's going to be a massacre. Ambush is really our best bet. So I'm planning then to have everything appear empty once they arrive. I'm hoping Gyro, her ranger, can scout out the attacking force so we can get a heads up and plan for their arrival. But Thomas's character and I did go off to the shipwreck, the two of us. And we find the shipwreck in the ocean, a little ways off the coast. I try to use the water control rod to use the water of the ocean to push the shipwreck towards the coast. It was a fine idea. It would have been nice. But, of course, I rolled a 1. Critical fail. And so Ziggy had pre-planned that whenever this rod critically failed, it breaks. So, it broke. Which is a bummer, because that was certainly part of our defensive strategy, was using the control rod, and now we don't have it. So, we lost an advantage, which is not good. But we still want to get in the shipwreck. So I send my shaped consciousness in to scout it out. I feel some sort of, like, ethereal, unnerving presence in the ship, which is likely some sort of ghost that will attack us. But I do find a bunch of crates full of weapons. One of them is partly broken open, so a bunch of the weapons in there have rusted. But there are a few crates similar that are sealed. So if we could retrieve these and actually have proper weapons for all our militiamen, that would be pretty good. That would be pretty nice. And the captain's quarters, the door is like sealed shut. And likely there might be some delicious magic items in there, which is really what I'm hoping for. Magic items are my bread and butter. I mean, I can do some very interesting, creative stuff with good magic items. So that's what I'm banking on. Of course, neither of us want to like just swim in there, fight a ghost, and get all this stuff. That's not how we do things. All right, it has to be done cleverly. So originally, my idea was to tie a grappling hook around like a sturdy part of the ship. Wrap it around a tree, tie it off to Thomas's character, and then I use living missile to rocket him towards the ship so it would pull on the rope and very forcefully pull the ship towards the coast. He argued that this would tear him apart. I don't know if that's true. We've never done it. But I liked the idea. I've never used living missile in that way. And we could find like a bear or something and try it on that, but this led to another discussion in which we find a bear, we sedate it, we strap like 100 swords to it, and then I just living missile it into like the crowd of the army and just send it spiraling through there, which at the very least would be decently destructive, I think, but that's just an idea. In the end, we decided what we probably should do is just like tear open the side of the shipwreck, strap the grappling hook to the crates, and then just pull them out. And I can use shape consciousness to do a good chunk of that. Really, you know, anything we can do to avoid fighting a single enemy is the bee's knees. And I think Ziggy probably knows that at this point. But the real highlight of the session, the real highlight, was Gold came up to us after we arrived back in town, and he said he's got some new merchandise. He tried to sell us like some powder that we could use to improve one of our weapons to +1 or something like that, but we couldn't afford it. And then he talked about this rabbit. And he said this rabbit eats coins. That was it. He said it eats coins. And this started a very lengthy little side discussion and interaction with this rabbit. And sort of determining what exactly it liked to consume. And sure enough, I mean, we fed it some gold, and it seemed to grow bigger. And it seems to eat copper, silver, and gold coins. But we also determined that it eats gems. And so we did some experiments with it and see if does it eat any metal? Does it eat all metal? Because that has uses. And then we sort of went into this, does it eat anything that's valuable? But, you know, I sort of went into this thing of like, well, what is value? You know, a society determines value. So does it only eat materialistic valuable things, or does it also eat like sentimental valuable things? So we offered it some thing that Gyro had that was sentimental to her that wasn't really materialistically valuable, but it didn't go for that. And so then I was like, okay, well, what if we really believe that something is valuable, but it's not accepted as valuable by society, which I guess that's the same thing as sentiment, but, you know, trying to trick it, basically. What is its area of effect for determining value? So then I tried the opposite. What if I conjure like a gold coin? What if I conjure something that anyone looking at it normally would believe it to be valuable, but it's not actually valuable due to my knowledge? You know, I know that it's not valuable because it's just made out of nothing. It's going to go away in a 5 minutes. It didn't go for that. It didn't go for that gold coin. It didn't like it. It knew that it was not valuable. So then I wanted to try an experiment, which I didn't get to. I wanted to try an experiment in which I give the fake gold coin to some stranger who believes that it's real, and then he gives it to the rabbit because he believes that it's valuable. I didn't have time to, they sort of cut me off before I got to that, but that was an experiment I wanted to try. And then it was sort of, does it only eat valuable metals and minerals? What if we offer it like a valuable spice? So we went with like saffron, which probably doesn't exist in D&D, but whatever, you know. What if we get some saffron and offer that to it? Will it eat that because it's valuable? Or does it only eat metals? And, you know, why does it eat what it eats? That's really what we wanted to determine. I could have sat there for a few hours experimenting with this rabbit, but the others seemed to want to move along. And so they basically just kept feeding it gold coins. And it grew bigger. Not like huge. It basically grew to the size of a normal rabbit, like a full-grown rabbit. But more importantly, it seemed to grow more intelligent. And eventually it asked for like a writing utensil. It looked like it wanted to write something. So I gave it like a stick, and it wrote in the dirt, "More food, or more coins, please," or something like that. So clearly this is an intelligent, like, sapient creature. At this point, I told Golk, who wanted to sell us this rabbit, I told him that it's unethical for you to own this creature. You know, it's basically slavery. And he agreed very quickly. This was its own thing now, and the others kept feeding it, and eventually it was able to talk. And it said that it had been born like a few hours ago,
The resistance has already seen
or something like that. Like he just gained knowledge of his own existence as we were feeding it.
And now they'll be expecting us to hit
So
where it hurts. Not that I'm worried. We've got
it didn't have a name.
to take
It
on.
asked for a name, so we called it Hubert.
Starting to get interesting.
And Gyro grew attached to this rabbit very quickly. But, you know, it's not a pet. With how much we fed it already, it's already smarter than most of us. And so she asked if he wanted to come along. And I explained that if it wanted more coins, it could earn those coins by assisting us, you know, as part of our adventures. And that's how life works. You know, he's not a pet. And then I took the others aside and I discussed that wizardry, you know, becoming a wizard in D&D, from what I understand, is purely like a learned talent. You go to wizard school and you study books and tomes, and that's how you learn how to use magic. Whereas sorcery is an innate ability possessed by a few. They are born innately capable of using magic, and they don't have to study books and tomes and stuff. They can just use magic. So I reasoned that if this rabbit is as intelligent as he seems, if we just gave it a bunch of wizardry tomes, it's certainly possible that he could learn how to use magic, and we could have a powerful ally here. And they seem to agree. The question that I have, of course, is this is an anomaly, is what it is. This is a highly intelligent creature that is only a few hours old. But it's not like a newborn, you know. It has knowledge of things. Obviously, it has vocabulary, and this is an alien thing to our normal understanding. And so what I'm worried about is, what does it feel about morals and ethical dilemmas? You know, does it actually care about human life the way that we might care about it? Things like that. There's a lot of moral questions that I need to discuss with it. So next chance we have, I plan on sitting down with it for an evening and just, it's going to be like some sort of Blade Runner turtle on its back style stuff of just figuring out how this thing's mind works. But I'm certainly open to teaching it magic and having it tag along. But I would say overall, Artemis is worried that if this thing keeps eating, it will eventually become smarter than he is, and that's always a concern. But yeah, we spent quite a bit of time on this rabbit issue and just sorting it out. For a while, we thought it would just keep growing bigger and bigger physically, and eventually there'd be like just some 1,000-ton giant rabbit monster just stomping. It would be like a Tarrasque, basically, and we would have no control over it. It did not end up being that way, but these are the things you have to be worried about, and that's why I was so concerned when they just started feeding it a bunch. It worked out, I guess, but damn, you can't just do shit like that. So that's where we ended, with us, two of us at the shipwreck working out that problem. Gyro up north, scouting out this army. She actually encountered like a recon force of like 6 orcs. And she was hiding up in a tree, and the session ended with the orcs like camping underneath her tree, unaware of her presence. And since I'm not there, I cannot advise her on any level about what to do in this situation. And I would very much like to advise her, because this represents a problem that I would prefer to have solved correctly. Maybe she'll end up doing the right thing. It's definitely possible. But if not, it could be a big problem. And I'm not even going to say anything about my advice, because who knows? Someone could be listening. I don't want to break the rules of D&D. Yeah, so next session, tomorrow, I guess. Could very well be a big battle. Or there could be no battle. I mean, the orcs might not be interested in us at all. I don't know. Who knows? But obviously they sent a recon force, so something's happening. And the concept, the idea of a big battle in D&D 4e got me thinking. It got me thinking, like, what if you took this exact same campaign, same setting, you know, same enemies, same situations, and you just plopped it, and instead of using D&D 4th edition, you used Shadow of the Demon Lord. So you wouldn't use Demon Lord's default setting, you wouldn't use its sort of Demon Lord campaign concept thing, you would just use the mechanical rules, and you would use the same campaign. Would it be better? And you can even use like a grid and minis with Shadow of the Demon Lord. I mean, it's certainly ready to accommodate that. Would it be better? And I really only bring it up because of the idea of big combats, and really combat in general. That's still my biggest issue with 4th edition. And some people love it because of that, but in 4th edition, if you are having a 3-hour session and you make the mistake of not being present for a battle, you know, your character's not present for a battle, whether because they're somewhere else or because role-playing, you know, whatever reason might come up that you're not present in a battle, you know, half your night could be gone and you're just sitting there because you're not present in this one battle. It's basically like they pop open a board game and start playing without you, and you have to watch. That's basically what happens. Now, if you're in the combat, sure, there's a lot of interesting things that can happen. It's very tactical. Like, it's like a board game. It's cool. But at the same time, even though it is cool, not a lot happens in the story during that time. If you look at a session of like a book, yeah, if you look at a session of 4th edition, say 3 hours, as a chapter of a book, not much happens in that chapter. It's basically just fighting. Whereas if you have a session where no combat occurs, that could be a really interesting chapter where all sorts of things happen, days progress, all these events can occur, different situations. And maybe the chapter focusing on the combat is really well written, it's very high intensity, maybe it's cool, but if you have 30 chapters in that book just devoted to combat, it's like, okay. Whereas with something like Shadow of the Demon Lord, where a combat could take 20 minutes, I mean, you can have a chapter that is varied and has all sorts of interesting. You have different situations, you have progression, you have story, you have a bit of combat in there for good measure, blah, blah, blah. I mean, overall, of course, I'm saying that I prefer Shadow of the Demon Lord to 4th edition. That's not a big enigma, that's not a mystery or anything like that. Of course I do. The thing is, though, so far, anytime we've played Shadow of the Demon Lord, it's always been with that sort of Demon Lord campaign thing, where it's always 10 sessions long. It's always sort of at a breakneck pace where you get a level every session, and the world just gets progressively more epic and more dangerous and darker and blah, blah, blah. And so I wondered if you just throw that all out and just do like a normal D&D campaign, but using those superior rules, I would say. Now, of course, I was the one that originally brought up 4th edition D&D as a option to Ziggy, because I do think it's pretty cool. There's a lot of stuff about 4th edition I like. I like having all the powers. The out of combat stuff is always entertaining to me in 4th edition, even though a lot of people don't like that. I always think there's just a lot of options. But especially now, Shadow of the Demon Lord, they put out a new book. They kickstarted it. I ordered it. I got the PDF. I'm looking through it. It's called Occult Philosophy. It's insane. It added like over 800 new spells for every tradition. And it added spells up to rank 10 instead of rank 5. The rank 10 spells are fucking bonkers, man. It's like Godbound type shit where you're just bringing down these massive tornadoes and meteors, and you can just lay waste to entire city. Like, it's crazy. And so far that whole book is incredible. That's a must-have for Shadow of the Demon Lord. And it's like, Shadow of the Demon Lord, there's a lot of fucking options, in combat, out of combat. As I'm reading all these spells and stuff, something warm and tingly happens inside of me. There's just so much cool shit. And especially, the reason I brought up 4th edition D&D was originally because I felt nostalgia, harkening back to our days of playing with a grid and minis. And so whenever I think of a grid and minis, I think of 4th edition D&D. But now it's like, well, we could just try that with Shadow of the Demon Lord, and we could try just having a normal campaign with Shadow of the Demon Lord. Would it be better? I brought it up to Ziggy, and I said, I'm not suggesting we like switch this campaign over, which is perfectly doable. I mean, you can do that. But I didn't want to, we have a big group. People are enjoying 4th edition, I assume. I don't want to mess anything up. But I just brought it up to him as like, I'm curious, do you think it would be better? He didn't have much to say about the topic because I think he's focused on 4th edition. But he said he would think about that as a possibility of would it be better. The tone of Shadow of the Demon Lord is overall darker, and using the bestiary and stuff, is overall going to be a darker thing. You know, Ziggy right now gets to look through all these classic D&D monsters, which are very traditional, and there's also some weird, wild stuff in there, but there's nothing really, like, fucked up and dark and grotesque. Not really. Not early on, at least, whereas all of Shadow of the Demon Lord seems pretty dark and fucked up and blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, I just wanted to talk about this. I don't think we're planning on switching. I wouldn't be opposed to it, of course. Because, like I said, this occult philosophy book, there's some insane shit in there that makes me very excited. But when we do eventually get back to Shadow of the Demon Lord, there's going to be some good times. There's going to be some good stuff. But alright, that's enough out of me. So check out the SCP-3007 video tomorrow, World of Two Artists. Hopefully, assuming nothing catastrophic goes wrong, check out the Aboleth video later this week, D&D. We got more Star Wars and Disco Elysium coming. And all is well as we close in on Christmas. Very exciting. My name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. I'll see you fine folks next week.